You know the scene, right? You're driving in Malaysia, and they're everywhere. Motorcycles weaving through traffic, they're just a constant part of our daily commute. And for a lot of people, they're the only way to get around, to beat the jams, to save some cash. But let's be honest, there's a certain assumption that comes with seeing them, an assumption about the riders and the risks they take. We're going to dive into that, because the real story here is way more surprising than you think.
Okay, let's just start with a number that's, well, it's pretty shocking. A study from Malaysia's Vehicle Theft and Accident Reduction Council, we'll just call them VTRX, found that motorcyclists and their passengers make up nearly 70% of all deaths on our roads. 70%. It's a horrible statistic that seems to confirm all our worst fears about riding a motorcycle.
So when you hear a number that high, your brain probably jumps to a conclusion, right? It's easy to think, well, it must be the riders. The stereotype is that motorcyclists are reckless, that they're the ones causing these terrible accidents. But what if the hard data tells a completely different story?
Because this is where it gets crazy. That same VTRC study found that only 13% of accidents involving motorcycles were actually caused by the motorcyclists themselves. Just let that sink in for a second. They make up the vast majority of people who die, but they're only at fault in a tiny fraction of the crashes. And that right there, that is the paradox we're going to unpack today.
If this breakdown is already giving you a clearer picture, go ahead and hit like and subscribe so you'll always stay one step ahead on Malaysia's biggest issues. All right, so if it's not the riders causing most of these accidents, then who is? Well, the study gives us a pretty clear answer. Take a look at this. The VTAREC data breaks it all down for us. It turns out that cars are responsible for a massive 67% of these accidents. Commercial vehicles like lorries and vans are next at 20%. And way down at the bottom, motorcyclists at just 13%. So while riders are the ones paying the ultimate price, the data's pointing the finger somewhere else entirely.
And look, this isn't just my take on the numbers. The council that did the study spelled it out themselves. Maz Tina Abdul Hamid from VTRX said it plainly. We keep blaming bikers, but the data shows it's car drivers who really need more awareness about road safety.
But here's the thing, the official report says one thing, but that doesn't always match up with what people see with their own two eyes on the road every single day. And this is where we get into the blame game, what the data says versus what we all experience. And to be fair, this doesn't let riders completely off the hook. Not at all. Other studies show that certain rider behaviors are huge risk factors. We're talking about things we've all seen, right? Using a phone while riding, not signaling a turn, aggressive driving, or just blowing past stop lines.
And this is where that huge disconnect comes in. I saw this comment online that it hits the nail on the head. It's the people who actually experience the chaos on the road versus the people in an office compiling the data. And the commenter just says, "You choose." It perfectly captures that feeling of doubt. So you can see how this is getting complicated, right? It's not just about one driver versus another. There are much bigger forces at work here. We've got to zoom out and look beyond just the person on the bike or the person in the car to really get what's going on.
First up, let's talk about the roads themselves. Because in Malaysia, the very pavement beneath our wheels can be a hazard, especially if you're on two wheels. You've got potholes, cracks, uneven surfaces, poor drainage, the list goes on. Now, a car might hit a pothole and you just feel a jolt, but for a motorcyclist, that same pothole can be absolutely catastrophic. So what's the official solution? Well, the Malaysian Institute of Road Safety Research, or MIROS, their big idea is to shift motorcyclists over to public transport. I mean, it sounds logical, right? Trains are way safer, but then you crash into reality. For so many people, public transport just isn't a practical option. We're talking poor connections, higher costs, and way longer travel times. For them, a motorcycle isn't a choice, it's a necessity. Okay, so if getting riders off the road isn't a simple fix, what's the next best thing? How do we make the ride itself safer? This is where technology and engineering come into play, and where some really concrete changes are finally happening. Let's talk about a real game changer, the anti-lock braking system. You've probably heard it called ABS. So what is it? Put simply, it stops your wheels from locking up and skidding when you have to slam on the brakes. This means you can still steer the bike even in an emergency, and that can be the difference between a terrifying close call and a devastating crash. And this isn't just a nice-to-have feature anymore, this is huge.
The government has made it law. Starting in January 2025, every single new motorcycle over 150cc sold in Malaysia must have ABS. This is a massive step forward in making a life-saving feature standard.
So, how much of a difference can this one piece of tech actually make? Well, a World Health Organization report found that ABS can slash fatal motorcycle accidents by up to 31%. Just think about that. This one rule change has the potential to save hundreds of lives on our roads every single year.
But new laws and better roads, all that stuff takes time. So what can riders do right now, today, to protect themselves? That brings us to our final section, a survival guide for every single person who rides a motorcycle in Malaysia. It all boils down to one philosophy: defensive riding. We've taken advice from experts and experienced riders and broken it down into 5 key pillars. It starts with a mindset. Ride as if you're invisible to everyone else. It forces you to constantly be aware, to scan for threats. And it goes all the way to knowing your machine inside and out, because a well-maintained bike is a safe bike. And when we say wear your armor, we need to be really specific. The number one lifesaver, always, is a serum-approved helmet. And listen, it has to be strapped on tight. A loose helmet is a useless helmet. After that, we're talking bright, reflective clothes so people can see you, plus gloves, proper shoes or boots, and a real riding jacket. This isn't about looking cool. It's the only protection you have. But maybe the most powerful piece of advice comes from a fellow rider on Reddit who put it so bluntly, so perfectly. Whatever happens, you'll be the one who receives the worst of it. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. The laws of physics don't care about blame. On a bike, you are always vulnerable. So you have to throw away that ego and make survival your only priority.
Thanks for watching. If you want to be part of a community that looks for clarity on our roads, not just confusion, tap that like button, hit subscribe, and let's keep making sense of all this together.
At the end of the day, road safety is everyone's job. But we're left with this huge divide, right? The official numbers tell one story, but our daily experience on the road tells another. So the real question for all of us, whether we're on 2 wheels or 4, is this: how do we close that gap and finally make our roads safer for everybody?